This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. Go to cardkingdom.com to buy all kinds of Magic products, including Ultimate Masters. Hello everyone, I'm Nitsuhone, and it is Friday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10. Most of the time, these videos look at Magic's history and talk about 10 cards in a particular category that have had the biggest impact on Magic, based on how successful they have been at Pro Tours and Grand Prix. This MTG Top 10 isn't one of those. As is usually the case when new limited formats come out, this video looks at the here and now in Magic, and it contains my picks for the 10 most powerful cards in the most recently spoiled set, which is Ultimate Masters, and that's most powerful when it comes to draft. These are the cards that you most want to see pack one, pick one, and cards you should take over every uncommon in the set. One thing to note before I get started, and I'm just going to say it outright, there are no Eldrazi on this list. Yes, if you can play these Eldrazi or cheat them into play, and there are ways to do that in the limited format, they are going to be among the most powerful possible things you can do. That said, it's not so easy to cheat them into play. You mostly need rare cards to do it, that you really feel like you want to be first picking them in most cases. It does seem like a lot of fun, but it doesn't really seem like the ramp is there, and it doesn't seem like the reanimation or other ways to cheat them into play are at a high enough critical mass for them to be at their best. So no Eldrazi on this list. Now, let's get started with number 10. At number 10, I have Glen Alandra Archmage. In a lot of ways, the Archmage isn't really what you think of when you think bomb. I mean, it's a 4-mana 2/2 flyer. Those aren't great stats, but it is a very powerful card. Removal is one of the most important things for a limited deck to have. And, well, Glen Alandra Archmage can attack in the air, and whenever you need to, she can counter one of those problematic removal spells, and she can actually do it twice because of Persist. She's not exactly the kind of bomb that's going to win the game all on her own, but she is going to make it so that it's very difficult for your opponents to successfully cast removal spells on you for the rest of the game. I definitely advise when you want to cast Glen Alandra Archmage to make sure you have the 1 blue mana up so that you're not left, sort of with your pants down and unable to defend yourself and your creatures. At number 9, I have Bitter Blossom. If you play this on turn 2, you're just going to win the game. There are not a lot of ways for your opponent to win. If you play this on turn 2 and start getting a 1/1 flyer every turn from turn 3 on, you're just going to swarm them and kill them. But that alone wouldn't be enough to make it a bomb. Obviously, it's great on turn 2, but it's good in the later stages of the game as well. It's good in every stage unless you're just getting completely destroyed. It's also the kind of card that's great for breaking up parity because it suddenly gives you more bodies that you're getting to produce for free. After you get the first or maybe the second token, it's going to feel pretty much free. The life loss, yes, can be a problem, but overall, you're going to get way more value out of this than you're going to get hurt by it. And again, if you play it on turn 2, it's just going to end the game more or less on turn 2. At number 8, we have Revelark. This has some nice aggressive stats for limited. A 5-mana 4/3 flyer would be a playable card already. But when you add to that the fact that this brings back 2 cards from your graveyard when it dies, it becomes a lot more of a problem for your opponent. So yeah, they're going to want to deal with this large flyer who puts them on a 5-turn clock at best. But even if they do, you're probably getting 2 cards back from your graveyard. Yeah, they have to have power 2 or less, but you can sort of build around this to some extent, but you don't even have to do it that hard to end up with 2 power creatures, at least 1 2-power creature in your graveyard in the later stage of the game. So Revelark is always going to give you value, and if it doesn't give you value, it's probably just killing your opponent in the sky. Number 7, we have Cigar, the Golden Fang. So Cigar can be a really efficient 4/5, but that's not really what makes it a bomb. It wouldn't make this list on that alone. What makes it a bomb is the fact that it can just be an incredible mana sink that draws you cards in the late game. Sure, your opponent gets to decide which cards from your graveyard you get back, but it always has to be a non-land card. So they're pretty much always going to be giving you a real card. Sure, it'll be the one you want the least, but it will still be a real card, and over time, it's going to give you a ton of value. Obviously, you do have to be either, black-green or black-blue or playing all 3 of them to really get the most out of Cigar, but it's not that hard to do that. So I think Cigar is a pretty great card. At number 6, we have Sublime Archangel. The 4-mana 4/3 flyer is already a very playable, powerful creature. Add to that it itself not only has Exalted, but it also gives all your other creatures Exalted, and this gets to be completely insane. What this means is, all on its own, it can attack as a 5/4 flyer, and it's 4 mana, so that's awesome. But if you have any other creatures in play, it's going to get even bigger than that, because for each creature you have in play, it's going to get +1/+1 when it attacks alone. It has evasion, so it's obviously a great thing to be attacking alone with, and it's going to hit your opponent really hard and put them on a very quick clock. This is the kind of card that's just all about sheer aggression and power. It's just going to kill your opponent very quickly. At number 5, I have Mikaeus, the Unhallowed. So he's got a lot of text on him, but what makes him really strong is the fact that he pumps your whole non-human team and gives them undying, which means when they die, they don't really. They come back with a +1/+1 counter the first time they die, so they not only come back, they come back larger. On top of that, he does have Intimidate, which can come up from time to time, and the fact that he kills humans that do damage to you doesn't hurt either. But the part that really makes him a bomb is the Anthem effect for more or less your whole team, and Undying for your whole team. He is a little bit limited because he costs triple black, and that's always a little bit annoying. But aside from that, Mikaeus is incredibly powerful. At number 4, I have Karn Liberated. Planeswalkers are very regularly powerful in Limited, and Karn is no exception to that. He has the ability to just exile any permanent the minute he comes into play, take cards out of your opponent's hand whenever he wants to, and in the long run, he's just going to gain you a lot more cards and take a lot of cards away from your opponent. His ultimate is nice too. Not going to come up super ultra often in Limited, but if it does, well, that's some fun to have. He is somewhat restricted in his power because he does cost 7, but it kind of balances out because at the same time, he's colorless. So if you pick him, pack 1, pick 1, you can play him in most cases. And number 3, we have the other Planeswalker in the set, Liliana of the Veil. She is very different from Karn in that you actually want to play her early, and you can play her early. She starts going after your hand and your opponent's hand, and you can actually get some benefit out of that. There's a lot of madness in this set. On the flip side, that does mean your opponent might discard something with madness, and that might be a problem. But chances are, if you're the one with Liliana, you've got a better chance of having the madness. She can also kill creatures. Like if you play her on turn 3, and your opponent has 1 creature in play, and you use her -2, you can set her up to just dominate the rest of the game. And getting to her ultimate is also very powerful. It ends up, having your opponent's permanence in play. She just does a lot. If you play her on turn 3, it's going to be hard for your opponent to find a way to win the game. And even in the late game, she has use, and that's what makes her a bomb. At number 2, I have Cigar, Host of Herons. It's a huge flying hexproof, and there's not a lot of interesting things to say about that, except that it's hard to kill, it's hard to block, and it does a lot of damage. On top of that, the fact that it says spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause you to sacrifice permanents means that this is completely unkillable any way outside of combat in this format. There are Eldrazi with Annihilator. Guess what? That won't work. There's All as Dust. That won't work either. Edict effects won't work. There's no way to kill her. You can't target her. There's no effect in this set that does enough damage to creatures with flying or creatures in general to kill her. You can't target her, and you can't make someone sacrifice her. So if you see her come into play, you better have a decent way of blocking her or slowing her down. Otherwise, she's just going to kill you. And at number 1, I have Mana Vault. It isn't often these days that we see a mana rock this absurd in a limited format. And this is, don't get it wrong, completely absurd. So if you play this on turn 1, on turn 2, you're going to have access to 5 mana immediately. You can play your 5-drop on turn 2. Yes, you have to have something worth playing, but guess what? You're usually going to in most limited decks. If you play any 5-drop on turn 2 in a game of limited, a lot of the time it's just going to win you the game. You're just going to be so far ahead of your opponent. Sure, if the game goes long, it gets to be kind of annoying that this stays tapped down. You can't use it multiple times really effectively. But you can untap it when you need to. It's not like it stays locked down for forever. You do start sort of losing the mana you gained the more you pay for it, but the huge leap of mana it gives you in the early game is incredible, and even if you play this later, it's going to give you an absurd mana advantage. Worth noting, it can be a lot more mediocre in the really late game, where what do you need all that mana for? But because it's so absurdly powerful in the early and mid game, it's still the biggest bomb in the set, and I don't really think there's much you should take over it. There's really not anything you should take over it in this entire format. Also, it doesn't hurt that it's worth a lot of money. Well, that does it for this week's MTG Top 10. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon to make sure you get notified every time I post a new video. This weekend, for example, I'm going to continue posting videos about the Ultimate Masters Limited format, including an archetype guide and my picks for the best commons and uncommons. And next week, we'll get back to our more normal MTG Top 10, looking back at Magic's history. Thanks for watching.